Hello and welcome to episode 84 of our Conversations to Connect. Let's Get Real podcast powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi O'Neill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. Our conversation to connect this week is with the amazing and fabulous Laurie Hardie joining us from Everett, Washington. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you.
I am so excited to walk alongside you as we unpack what Beyond Words, speaking to create connection is all about. Making people feel seen, feel heard, feel valued. It's really a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And the more I work with people, the more they use the word invisible, or they say they don't feel seen and heard, and they believe that's normal.
How sad that is that that's
Hmm.
the benchmark for that.
Yeah.
Well, before we dive into this rich conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce Lori to our exceptional connectors who may not already know her. Laurie Hardie is a beloved Seattle radio host, author, speaker, podcaster, and coach, and so much more. She has spent more than 3 decades helping people share their stories with courage and with clarity. As a former single mom of three, and now Grandma LaLa, which I love, to six, Lori understands the profound value of capturing life's moments, honoring our experiences, and passing wisdom from one generation to the next. And isn't that what it's all about? Right? So, Lori is passionate about helping women speak in a way that truly connects. During the pandemic, she made a powerful discovery. Many podcasters, Zoom facilitators, online leaders believed they were communicating inclusively, but their methods were unintentional, isolating listeners. They weren't speaking to their audience, right? So, drawing from her 35 years of broadcasting and her degree in social services, Lori now teaches people how to make their voices more inviting, intentional, and impactful. So, Lori, share a little bit with us about your journey as we kick off discussing Beyond Words, creating to connect, create connections.
It was really funny because during COVID is when I made this connection. And although I was alone all the time, I wasn't really lonely. I was single, but I wasn't really lonely. But I would get on these calls and I would, yeah, once they got established, I'd lean out, I'd get on my phone, I'd turn off my camera, and they're like, turn your camera on. And when I would be done, I'd think, why am I getting on all these calls? But they were necessary. They were all necessary. They were part of a different business or my work or whatever. And I was thinking, I must be a narcissist. That's what I thought. I must be a narcissist. And I started to really consider that. Why is it why do I feel like I want them to know who I am? Like you go to a big concert, the people on stage are not going to know who you are. So what's that about? And I thought something's wrong with me, but then this thought came in my head. Remember what you learned in Radio 101. You talk to one person. And that's how I've lived my last 40 years is talking to one person. So if I'm on stage and there's 1,000 people and I'm introducing a concert, I still talk to one person. And what I recognized is that these people who were very loving, kind, amazing people were going, hey, everybody. Hey, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, that doesn't bother me. And I'm glad because that means you probably don't have childhood trauma. But the truth is, 65% of us do. And those of us with trauma, whether we've been in counseling or not, we're always looking to exclude ourselves versus include ourselves. So when the words you guys or everybody comes up, most they don't know that. I don't think that's anything conscious, but I started watching. I started researching when I made this connection. As soon as the leader's like, welcome everybody, all of a sudden, camera, camera, camera going off, people, getting on their phone while they're listening. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is real. And because it was so natural for me, I it was hard to sink in. So this is what happened. If you're in this area, you may have heard of Shelley Hart. She was on Cube Radio forever, worked with me at Warm. She's an amazing, lovely person. Well, she is also the MC, meaning the arena MC for the Seattle Storm. So she's not announcing the game or even the events in the arena, but she's in the arena doing the thing. And people love her. People like cheer for her. And so when she decided to retire last year, she said to me, we're trying to pick a new person, but we're having a really hard time, and I can't figure it out. What the disconnect? And I said, well, guess what, Shelley? I know. And she's like, really? What? And I said, when you're on the floor, you don't say, hey, everybody, go down and buy this shirt at the team store. You say, have you got your shirt? Come on, let's go down to the team store. So simple, so simple. And she goes, I don't get it. I go, you talk to me. People in the crowd think you are talking to them. And so we went kind of through some of the applicants. And I said, see what they do. They go, hey, everybody. They're kind of like, look at me. I have my green hair. Look at me. Come and get, well, everybody should go to the team store because I'm telling you to go get your shirt. And I said, because you've done it for so many years, it's hard to connect those dots. And so in my section that I go to the Storm games with my sister, the next year when they hired two people to fill her shoes, people all around me, they go, we don't know why, but we don't like these ladies. We can't hear them. We think it's because we can't hear them, but it wasn't. I mean, that was part of the problem, but they didn't feel the invitation. They didn't feel the connection. And so at the end of the season, Shelley showed up. It was really hard because she loved everyone. It was really hard for her to go to the games now that she wasn't doing the floor. And every person that was sitting by me, there was at least 12 people, all turned and looked at me because they know by now Shelley and I have a connection. And they said, we miss her so much. And I said, what makes you miss her? And they looked at me really funny, like, well, we just missed her. I go, but what did you love about her? And they said, well, we feel like she's our best friend. We feel like we know her. And that just confirmed what I had said and what I had learned is that when people feel like they know you, they're going to lean in, they're going to care. Even Shelley Hart does not know the name of anybody sitting next to me. I know their names. She doesn't, but they feel like she's their best friend.
Wow, that is such a beautiful little nugget that you gave us and so critical because you're right. That's where the connection comes. It's not I think of, well, my garden analogy here, when you're spreading seeds and you have one of those seed spreaders,
Hmm.
you're broadcasting it out there. We all know that some land in the right place, some don't, some get dried out. But if you're hand putting them in the ground, and you're hand watering them and you're giving them love and care and nurturing them, the chances of them growing are huge, right? And I see that same kind of a visual with you. You're not just broadcasting out, hey, everybody.
Yeah.
You're making that personal invitation and that you're really cementing that connection. And that's what it's all about. I love what you say. People feel they're hungry, right? They're hungry to feel connected, to feel a
Mhm.
connection.
Yeah. More than ever. And it's that big marketing thing. I remember hearing this again after I'd made this discovery. I was on these different marketing calls, and they say, you got to niche down when you talk to everybody, you talk to nobody. So it's across the room, it's across the way, but it feels odd. And I think that is the reason people struggle with it. So when I get in front of a room, this mother hen in me wants to be everybody, say everybody, but my training can't. I can't. I'm so glad you're here. That's what I say. And so we can train ourselves. If you've ever gone to Toastmasters, you learn how to not say and you don't do it anymore. If you work on the radio, guess what? You learn to never swear when you are in any kind of room. It doesn't happen, even unless we're in the break room. Something about the break room, everybody swears. But the minute you walk in any room with a microphone, anybody in this industry, they don't, their brain goes microphone, no swearing. We can train ourselves. And that's the intentional part that we go, I want to train myself to make people feel welcome and invited into the room.
Well, you're right, because ever since you've shared that message with me and I say the opposite, I catch myself. Okay, so there's a continuum, right? You got to give yourself grace. If you're used to being oblivious to it and not being conscious of what you're doing, but the point is, Lori, I'm catching myself,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Can't always take it back, but you catch yourself sooner. The sooner you catch yourself, that's when you really have the opportunity to change things and make a difference.
I
So maybe
love that.
next time I'll catch myself before I say it.
Right. And I love that because when I do these presentations, people then can be afraid to talk because we automatically say things. And so I have a lot of grace. If you're working with me one on one, I might, help you recognize it a little quicker. But there is a ton of grace. And if we change just one little thing each time, it's going to make a huge difference. And what I've noticed, I did an award for podcasters that don't say you guys. But what I noticed is if there's a leader that doesn't do that, this is what you see people on Zoom doing. They lean in. It's just pay attention to that as you go, you'll start to notice that.
Because especially with the COVID time, we had to go to virtual. That was the only way we can connect.
Yeah.
But we're hungry for it. If I have a choice between going to a live meeting or a Zoom meeting, I'll go take a live meeting anytime. But Zoom meetings are it's easy, right? You can get off one call, get on another call, be able to talk, be more efficient. That's what I learned during COVID. I'm like, wow, I'm getting a lot more done. But your heart is kind of empty because there's something really magical about the human connection. And what you're sharing with us is the words matter. Words connect us. And that's why people are leaning in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not really the voice. People go, I hate my voice. And I always say, get over it. Everyone hates their voice. I've never met a DJ that said in the beginning, oh, I just love my voice. It's so deep. So if you can get over that and realize it's your words, that is where the difference happens.
In your heart too, don't you think?
Hmm.
You could say the right words, but if you don't really have that intention or that spirit or the heart, people can tell.
Hmm.
So, to have the two aligned is magical.
Hmm. And really, it's just thinking about it. Like Cyndi, you say you start to notice it. We all talk about that TED Talk where she says, "Stand like a superhero for 2 minutes before you go on stage." Well, do that and think of that one person, and be so connected in your heart with that one person. So this is funny. When you say everybody, nobody feels like it's them. But when you just say you, everybody feels like it's them. Like I think I
Mm,
said this, you go to a concert with your friend and you're walking out and you go, he was looking at me. That lead singer was, and she's like, he was looking at me. Like, why? Because singers sing to one person.
mm. Yeah, see, that's another thing. Singing really goes to the heart.
Yeah,
When you sing, and that's why I started doing my commercials, as crazy as they are.
I love them.
I realized that it's not a pitch. Now I'm sharing my heart. I'm opening my heart. It's a magical thing. And so for singers to do that it's brilliant when people feel that love even more, that
Hmm.
that undivided attention, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Lori, this is probably a good time to you talk about voice as presence rather than performance, because we're already talking about, a singer, a songwriter, or somebody, right? Sharing. So, how can you tell the difference between the two? How can you tell when it's genuine versus like a stage performance?
I think that that might be the hardest thing for people because when they're going to speak, they're worried about how they're going to sound, how they're going to present, and then that's where the nervousness comes in. And then we worry about, will I say, will I say, will I? And those things are all things we can train ourselves on the back line when we're talking to people so that when we get up to speak, we're talking from our heart and it's not a performance. Now, that doesn't mean we just get up willy-nilly and just, it was Thursday, no, it was Friday. We want to respect our people's time. So we want our talk to be so valuable to the person who's listening. Well, if that's our intent, then that's what's going to happen because it won't be about us. And the problem is, and it's not a selfish thing, but when we get up to speak, often we get worried about what people are going to think. And if we can get ourselves past that and think, what I have is so valuable, I'm going to say it because I work in radio, as concise and as tight as I can, then I'm giving you a gift. And now I'm a blessing versus oh my goodness, looking at the watch.
That's such a good reminder because I mean, I know for myself, sometimes I'll put down on paper, what I want to share with a group, whether it's, a talk or just facilitating a group, because I've spent time on it, I've distilled it, and you can read it, but it doesn't land the same as when it's coming right from your heart. And
Right.
that's what I'm starting. It's taken me a long time, but that's what I'm starting to really, really understand is it doesn't have to be said perfectly, but if it's shared from the heart, people get it. They
Yeah.
hear that, they feel that. And so it's a good reminder to me to like, okay, you can put your thoughts on paper, you can, get clear and distill them and then put it aside and be able to just share from your heart.
And think about this as someone who sings, because I don't sing, but so you memorize your talk. Say you memorize it as much as you can. When we know something, we can talk around it. So if you're a singer and you know the words to a song, in between like whatever they're called verses,
Pandas, yeah,
you see
versus.
somebody out there, you can say, I see you're getting it. But if you don't know it and you're reading it, you're not going to be paying attention to your audience. But if you know it, you know what you know what you know, and we are all people who know what we know, then we can improvise around it because we know the message and it is from our heart. We're not trying to perform and prove anything. We're just offering a gift of what we know.
That's so good. Okay, Lori, you always talk about leaving a legacy, right? How important that is. And really knowing what we know, being able to be confident in our own skin, that's all important. And that's part of the legacy we leave on who we're being, right, on this earth. So, whether we intend it or not, what does unintentional legacy look like to you?
Unintentional is that I love what Jane Goodall said, that we're all leaving a legacy, but we get to decide what kind of legacy we want to live. And I had an uncle who was very mentally ill. And at his funeral, the pastor said, we all know his name was Creighton. We all know Creighton was difficult and hard to live with. And I'll tell you what, every person that I was around broke out in tears because they'd all been hurt by him because of his mental illness. And so that legacy he left was mental illness. Now he is mentally ill, so there isn't really a different legacy, I think, in that day and age he could have left. But we can be intentional about our legacy and we can say, you know what? So when my grandson Knox was born, his middle name is Dykers, which is German after grandma and grandpa. That was their last name, Dykers. And so I said to my son, oh, just like you, who his name is Davis, and he's married after Mom and Pa Davis, who owned the corner store on Whidbey Island where we all grow up. And he goes, what? Now, I've told him that story. His dad has told him that story, but he didn't remember. And I thought, I want to record these little vignettes so when I'm gone, they're in my phone and he can remember, yeah, what a legacy. I was named after my grandparents and my son was named after his grandparents. even though they were on different sides. So legacy is what we leave intentionally so that when we're gone, like if something was happened to me tomorrow, my kids would find my voice, they would find my video, and it would give them comfort.
Mhm. It would. I'm sure it would. And even just now, when you give them a call or you talk to them and you remind them of a story, right? That's all part of the intentionally living a legacy as well.
Yeah.
So language is so important, right? We talked about words being important and also the heart.
Mhm.
So how does language shape creating safety in a room? So, how
I,
can leaders be more intentional? Because we're talking about intentionality for legacy. So,
yeah.
how can leaders be more intentional about creating emotional safety in a room?
I love that because this is what the other thing that was happening. I was in some different groups and they would let people speak, like, why don't you give a aha moment or whatever. And when the people would speak, so this one marketer lady that I love, she had actually coached me through how to make my first offer. She opened up the mic and this man said, when you do these things and you get these results and, you have all this, you're going to feel like this. And I remember just shrinking away from him because it was so, in our face. And I knew that the person speaking had a lot to say. So I stayed in the room. But it was because he said, when you do this, okay, guess what? I had done that and it didn't work for me. So now I'm in the room and I feel like a failure and I'm not included and I'm backing out. I'm turning off my camera. I'm looking at my phone. And I again thought, oh, it's just me because people in the room were applauding him, saying his name. And I spoke with somebody who had been not even in that room, but in a different call. And she told me she had just had a one on one with this person and I happened to know his name. And she said, I can't explain, but I have this terrible feeling. I just didn't feel like he saw me or heard me. And at that moment I was able to say, well, this was the experience. He told me I will have this experience, and if I don't, I'm a failure. And he said it by just saying, when you go on a diet and you lose all this weight and you feel so great, your life is going to change and you're going to be so happy. And now I'm in the room. I've tried every diet and I can't lose weight. Now I don't belong and I'm a failure. So that's why owning our story. I went on the diet. I did this kind of system. I did it work for me. And now I can say, good for you. I'm glad it didn't work for me, but I'm so glad it worked for you. And I can stay present and feel like I belong because you haven't offended me and told me I'm a big fat loser. And that's not what we feel like we're doing. And that when you're on my podcast, I give you a sheet that says this. And sometimes I'll stop people in the middle of a podcast because I don't want my listeners to feel like failures because you had success and you think everyone that does it your way will have success. Now, do you think that? Probably not, but that's how you're coming across as a leader. So we can be more intentional as a leader and speak words of life and own our story, take responsibility for what's ours. This may not be for you. This was my experience.
That's such a sober reminder. It really is beautiful because, really, if you frame it as you did, afterwards, and saying, this is my experience, this is what I've been through, this is my journey, then you don't need to say anything else because then people feel hopeful and encouraged and that they can step in to the experience that you just went through, the good, the bad, the ugly, but still come out. There's hope at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So that is a really beautiful and sober reminder for not just leaders, for any of us, when we're sharing to be able to do so with kindness, with intention, not ever trying to shame anyone.
Right. And that's my mission to let people know because I believe most people don't know. They're not doing this intentional. Like when I thought of like this one leader, I adore her. I have met with her, I've been around her, but the minute you get on a call with her, you guys need to know, hey, you guys. And I just like now that I'm so aware of it, it I don't think about me. I think about other people like me who have been through trauma who don't feel like they belong and they're not getting this beautiful this woman has the most amazing message. She even brought butterflies to an event and let them go. Like she has this gold for the entire audience. But because of the way she is presenting, half of them will go away instead of seeing that beautiful butterfly and that's what they can be. They're going to be like, I'm never going to be that butterfly because I don't belong. It's belonging. And the more we know, the more we can do it every day in every way. And people will feel like they're your best friend. So there's this joke amongst my friends. They all think, everybody says that I'm their best friend. And I do have a lot of friends and a lot of best friends. But if we're in a group together and someone will say, well, she's my best friend, they'll be like, no, she's my best friend. And they fight. And now they know it's a thing. So they all fight. But what I realized is it's because that's the way I speak because of radio, because of all that I've learned is I speak as though you're the only one in the room, even if there's five of you. And because of that, people feel seen and heard and feel like I'm their best friend. And they all are my very dear friends in very different ways. But again, I didn't even realize that it was my radio training that was doing this.
That's a sobering reminder because don't we all want to be, in the end, seen, heard, valued, and as we say at Exceptional Connections, witnessed, right? Don't we all at the heart want that?
Yeah.
That's so important, whether you walk in a room or whether walk in a store. That's what they train the salespeople, right? Hello, welcome. You know, it's like, oh, maybe I'll stay a moment longer,
I know. Oh, they're talking to me. I
They're
mean,
talking to me.
that's the best thing. If somebody goes, "You're talking to me," you've done your job.
Yes. Oh, you know what? It reminds me of a story. I was in Europe and I was actually in Belgium, in Bruges, and I had the luxury of just being able to, for a whole week, shop by myself. And it was amazing. And I walked into these little shops and I have Spanish. My Spanish is rusty, but I speak Spanish and I brushed up on my French because I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to need it. I walk into these shops, and almost every shop, this was the case. I'd walk in, and they greet these young gals, young, high school age, well, all ages, but I remember a lot of young gals. They'd greet you in like four or five languages. Hello, hola, bonsoir, or whatever, and whatever language you responded to them in, they would speak that language to you. Is that
Wow.
amazing? That's what you're talking about. That's it. That's
Yes.
like, and so I talked to some of these young gals, and they're in Europe. They know five languages. All the young girls. It's just second nature. German, French, Spanish, English. And but to be able to speak my language,
Mhm.
respond in my language, and have a conversation was magical.
Mm. I love that. That's amazing.
And but if you think of that, that visual now and how we want to be able to do that with each person,
Yeah.
speak their language,
I
even if
love
it's
that.
English,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yeah. And the thing is and uh, they can be a little irritating, but they're not if you say that, that's not a big deal. In fact, if somebody tells me about saying, I'll say it the whole time because my brain will go, oh, don't say it, then say it. Those
Right.
aren't the important things. The important things are the things that make people lean in and feel like they matter. And we all want people to matter because that we wouldn't be in business. We wouldn't be trying to help them if we didn't care about them. And so inadvertently, we push people away. And so if we know these things and we can practice them, I believe we're going to see our businesses grow.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think it's a secret sauce. It's a key.
Yeah.
You're giving us access to something that is not widely talked about, but is so important.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so let's talk about as we're on our journey and we feel like our story is still messy, it's unfinished. Like, how do you know when you're ready to share it? is there a time when like, oh, it's time, the clouds part, the angels sing, it's time. You get pushed out the door. What's the visual? How do I know that it's time for my mess to become a message, the test that I've been through to become a testimony.
I love that because one of the things that we love is watching people walk through a journey which is unsolved. Unsolved murders, unsolved cancers, right? We like to watch,
Right?
oh, how's that going? So it's really about when we come to a place in our story that we're on the other side of wounded and we're building those scars because we talk different from our scars. We talk as a survivor versus a victim. And
Yes.
so when we're talking from a place of not to I don't like stories that are wrapped up with a big red bow and tied up and this is what happened to me and now my life is great because that's like if it is that's wonderful. But a lot of people do that. They have to wrap up their story. I have a friend who has a son with fetal alcohol. If you know that, she adopted him. If you know that, that story never ends. We don't get the big happy ending to those kind of stories. So, where in the midst of that story can she start talking and sharing with other people to build a community? How do we support these kids and these parents? So, I believe most of us have this intuition, and it will probably say, no, 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 I don't want to be judged if that's what it is. But we also have a nudging. I can't tell you how many people they say this, God told me I'm supposed to share my story, and then they don't. Now, guess what? I'm a coach and I'm responsible to help you share your story because you told me. So, how do I proceed in that way? So, really, it's the nudging, but also not listening to I call it the gremlin on your shoulder that goes, not yet, because there might be a person praying for someone who's a few steps ahead of them because they don't know what to do, whether it's a divorce, whether it's special needs kids, whether you've adopted kids and that's just overwhelming. When we can do it in the midst of our mess from a place of survivor, not victim, then I think that's the golden thread.
Wow. And that is a golden thread. You're right. That is so beautiful. And, you remind me of something that I just touched on for myself is when, and I'm pausing here because I'm wanting to reframe it for myself because I don't like to take ownership of this. So it's not, I'm going to say this for the purpose of this call, but I don't like to do this. My divorce. No, the divorce. The divorce that I experienced.
Yeah.
I had a friend and she was 5 years ahead of me. She had gone through her own divorce, her own unique situation with her two children. I had three children, but watching her walk through that, I remember one day we sat down, went to a Sherry's for just tea and to encourage one another. And I remember thinking, oh man, I could be alive in 5 years. She gave me hope that I can like still be around, still be functional, and be there for my kids. Because for some reason in my psyche, I was like, how am I going to make this? How am I going to survive this? How am I going to get through this?
Hmm.
And she was that hope in the future, right?
Yes.
So
I
no,
was
I was
going
just
to
going to say,
say,
so I love that you can be real with people, right? I
yes.
knew I
Yeah.
knew things weren't perfect for her. It was tough.
Yeah, see that, and I love that you struggled at first because you're like, well, I want to own my. So one of the things with my divorce is it was your divorce, but
Yeah,
people
but
will
it felt
say,
makes me feel like a victim when I say that. So
yeah, but
true.
even saying the divorce I went through, that's you were struggling because you're trying to find, and I love that because that says your brain is clicking in. It's going, I want to relate in a way because a lot of people will say my diabetes, and when I worked at Esther's place, and they would say my abuser, I would say, no, no, no. You want to own that abuser, or is it the person who abused you?
Right.
Because when you own it, now you're still the victim. So I
Right.
love that you brought that up because that's one I don't throw in because again, it's a deeper layer. But I love that your brain is going, oh, okay, how do I want to say this? Like you were being so thoughtful. You wanted to include all of us because you might know, I don't know who's been divorced or not. So see how your brain's already working on it?
Well, and it's also part of the journey too. I didn't realize that. So thank you for connecting that dot for me. But for
Yeah.
me, it's more the victim piece of it. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to take ownership of like my So my health journey, I've had a diagnosis with breast cancer, but I don't say my BC. I say the diagnosis that they made that I don't receive and accept.
Yeah, I love
You know what
that.
I mean? Just
Yes.
like it's out there. All
Mhm.
right, fine, but I'm not owning it.
Yeah, it removes it from you,
Right.
but you
Right.
still have your experience. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Lori, you shared a little bit about your journey with our community at our last event. And I think it's really, I really admire you and am so proud of you for being able to just openly share your journey because, like we're talking about, things are messy in life, right? It's not always, clean and tidy with the bow, like you say. Our life is unfinished. But we want to celebrate what we've learned in our journey and to be able to encourage others. So, would you share some of your journey with us?
It's funny because when you said like about my divorce, that was one of the first things before I made this connection. People would say, well, when you go through a divorce and blah, 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 like you do. And I was like, my divorce was not like anybody else I know because my husband left me for a man and I didn't know anyone. And so I couldn't relate. And so again, I even didn't feel like I belonged with the divorced people. So again, the journey is that I've walked through these things where I couldn't get a feeling of belonging because of my story. And, sometimes a story feels too big to share. And so it's just shared one on one. But here's the thing what Cyndi was saying about when do we know when to share our story? We can share our story without sharing our story. So, for instance, in my book, Did Not See That Coming, Hope for the Single Parent, I have a mom who is mentally ill. Now, I don't go around telling everyone that, but so in the book, I said a family member did this. Yeah, there it is. A family member, because my intention is never to hurt anybody, but my intention is if what I went through can help somebody else, then it will. And when you've walked through something, like this is weird, but I can tell a lot of times if somebody has a mentally ill mother. I can't explain it. They don't like, they're not, but there's things that they say that like, well, okay, so people in recovery, they can pick people in recovery like that. They can go, oh, she's in, even though that has never come up. So there's ways that we can share deep, hard stories by using language without hurting other people. And sometimes, like, I don't want to uh, put myself up for judgment, but I'm willing to share what I can, even if people judge me. Does that make sense? So I hate that when you say, does that make sense? So I just said it. So see, I do it. But we can tell stories without telling stories. And so podcasting, sometimes people think, well, my ex did this and blah, blah, blah. No, we can say, when I walked through a divorce and I had to meet with a lawyer, like we can use our stories to help others without the drama, it still works. So my
I love
journey. So mentally ill mom, and the husband who left me for a man. Then I had a very brief 1 year marriage to a teddy bear. Everyone, neighbors, everyone said he's a teddy bear. He's awesome. We had 7 kids between us, so we married quickly because we wanted to be, not doing the bad things that you do when you're dating. And he was a raging alcoholic. I had to escape from him. It was so scary. And I don't talk about it in my book because he would have come after me. Now it's been almost 20 years, so I can safely say things, but he stalked me for years. So I know when someone's being stalked or when they've been abused or maybe they've been under coercive control, just in some things they say. Now, I'm not going to probably stand up on stage and say that, but I'll definitely share one-on-one if it would help somebody. So then that's when I decided I'm going to stay single because I'm not going to put my kids through anything else. And then I just focused on raising my kids. I wanted to give them, a wonderful high school experience without their mom and dad dating. And so that was my choice. And I did it lovingly and happily for my kids. And so I passed up some morning radio shows in different states and different cities because they did not want to leave the island where their dad lived. And so I made that sacrifice. And I could be the victim of that too, but I chose not to. That was my decision. And look where I ended up. I didn't know that I would have a great future and be like on Cairo radio. Like, so, our journey, as hard as it is, it can take us places we never thought we'd go.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing your story, a little bit of your journey with us, and in the way you share it, we want to come alongside. I want to come alongside and learn more.
Mm,
And I respect you even more for, what you've been through and what you've learned, and I can feel your compassion
mm.
because you
Thank you.
know what it's like to walk through difficult times, right? So
Yeah.
you mentioned owning your story. Tell us a little more about that.
That is what we talked about earlier, taking responsibility for your story. And that is saying, when I did this. Now, when you go to the store and you see the thing that you want to buy and you don't have enough money, like that's separating your story from you. And when I went on that, when we go on this diet and we lose this weight, now you're framing it in a way you're not owning it and it can hurt somebody else. So when we don't own what we did, because we might do it very different than somebody else, and now they're feeling judged because we just didn't take a moment to say I.
Mm.
I say you, I'm glad you're here. But then the flip is when it's about you to say I. I did this. And sometimes it's because we still have a little bit of shame or victim. So we say, when you divorce, because I still feel bad about divorcing, you'll go through this. You have a horrible mother in law. Well, not everybody has a horrible mother in law. So see how that alienates people rather than, and I had a really tough mother in law, or I had, a special needs child. So, and then people say, like you do. Well, no, not everybody does that. Just because you did it doesn't mean everybody does it. So they're still trying to belong. And so when we really think about our story, and again, it's a learning, it's a process, but as we do it, again, we find people leaning in versus turning off the camera and getting off their phone because they can't relate anymore. And really, there's so much noise right now, people don't have time to not relate. They just don't have time to not relate. They have better things to do and other people to listen to. And I want to be the person they want to listen to. And I want them to feel valuable. I want to feel like you matter because you do. Every person put in our path is, they matter.
What just
I
occurred to
love
me
Danny's
is
heart. All I have
one of
is a,
my friends, mentors, Nikki Roush, your
yeah,
sales maven, she talks about, so you're talking about the power of using I, because that way people don't feel shamed, right? And they can relate if it's applicable or not.
yeah,
But she talks about in writing when you're sending a correspondence to somebody, whether it's mainly, like an email or something,
mhm,
you don't want to use I'm thinking about you, or I'm not using the right terminology, but I. She has you actually count how many times you use I in a
yes.
written correspondence, and how important it is to reframe it to you.
Hmm.
These are things that I can are that we can that are a benefit to you in your business.
So
So
that
there
is
is
so
a
good.
difference.
Yes, that's so good, Cyndi. And that's the thing where we want to be intentional and think about it. Because also, when somebody gets up on stage and says, I did this and I did that, and who likes that?
No.
But when it's your story. So
Right.
thank you for clarifying that. Because if I have to take ownership, it behooves me to use I. But if I'm going to share my podcast pro with people, I might say, "Are you feeling afraid?" So I'm using you because I'm not going, I was so afraid like that. I wasn't. I work in radio, but I might say, are you feeling afraid? Are you feeling overwhelmed? So I love that distinction because, Molly does a lot of newsletters. And also, Nikki got one of my awards because when she speaks, see, when writers speak, because they write to one person, they speak in this way. And she has received my, what was I calling it? Um, Just You award because when you speak in a way that people feel like it's just me here in the room, then That's the matter. So I love that you brought that up, Cyndi. And that is just it's just a consideration in your mind when you're writing your newsletter, when you're speaking, is to just weigh it. Is this about me or is this about them? And if it's my story, it has to be about me or it's going to feel like judgment. So I love that you brought that up.
Well, it's just using your words carefully and thoughtfully. It doesn't mean in writing, and this is what I just came to after listening to Nikki, that it's wrong, like X out the eyes.
Yes.
It's just being, like you say, being intentional, using
Mhm.
your story, your experience, whether it's in writing or in verbal communication, use it
Mhm.
intentionally. Being
Yeah.
aware is so important.
Yeah. One thing I say to my clients is, okay, they're doing a podcast, but it's not about them. It's about their story. Because if it's about them, they're just going to talk about who they are. But if it's about their audience, they're going to speak in a way that people, you catch them right away and you give them what they need, what they're looking for, what they want. And then once you have them, you can tell them what they really need, what's really important, because they don't know what they don't know. And so that's the whole thing is it's not about us, even if it's our story.
It's what people can be able to extract from that and be
Mhm.
able to take and use in their own lives. And that's what we always say at our Exceptional Connections events, and even for this podcast today is, take one thing that you can put into your life, right?
Mhm.
One thing that you can put into your business, one thing that you can, be able to work on or have more awareness of.
Yeah.
And that's what
Well,
it's all about.
can I make a promise?
Sure.
When any of you speak, if I run into you and you say you guys or you say everybody, I will not judge you because this is a truth. After I help someone get a podcast, I ask them for a testimonial. Cyndi, I need a testimonial. And I'm not kidding you. They almost always start with, "Hey, you guys." And all I could do is laugh. I laugh so hard, I take it off and it starts with "I'm so and so." But almost each one I get says, "Hey, you guys." And I just laugh because we learn. It takes a while to implement it. When I was in radio, it took a while to get used to, I'm just talking to one person here. And what was great was when someone would come in the studio, because then I feel like I'm just talking to them, even though I wasn't saying their name and nobody knew anybody was in there with me. So again, we learn and it's intentional. We decide to learn it.
And we have to be gracious with ourselves.
Grace.
Okay, I blew it,
Yeah. Hmm.
Be more aware next time, catch yourself. But it'll happen less and less, right? With that
Yeah,
awareness.
exactly.
So, well, this is a beautiful place to just kind of put a bow around our conversation and be able to open it up for those who are listening on this call. If you have any questions or ahas, epiphanies, love to have you just unmute yourself and join in our conversation that's been so rich and so beautiful. And so, as you unmute yourself, I'll call on you. So, Danny, you have your hand up.
Thank you so much, Lori. I learned so much. I have 2 pages of notes. So, um, when I write, I use you so that they feel like I'm talking to them. But sometimes I say we because I really want them to feel like I'm in this too.
Hmm. I love that because you're probably very intentional about it. So I might say when we go through a divorce, because there might be somebody in there that has and somebody hasn't, but then the next phrase might be something, we won't say then categorize them as you get the best lawyer. So we is the invitation. And I love that. And
Yeah, I
again,
guess if it's ever like a struggle where we're just all on this, planet together, I want them to feel like I'm in that journey with them.
yes. And I
But
love that.
then,
And
yeah.
it's not the hard rules, but it's that even when you say we, you're talking, if you were having coffee with somebody and they went through a divorce, you might say, when we go through a divorce or when we have a mentally ill mom or when we're struggling with recovery, that's a truism. Because you could say that to someone across for you, but you won't say to someone across from you, "Hey, you guys, hey,
Yeah,
everybody."
exactly.
And if you tell your story, that's when but when we is also, but then you continue it. If you're sharing when I went through this happened, then that's where you have to say, okay, this may not have happened to everyone, but I can say when we go through a divorce because there will be people. So,
Exactly.
so
Thank
you're
you.
being intentional, and I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you for
right,
bringing that up.
for sure.
Yeah.
Molly, you unmuted yourself, and then I have a question
Okay,
from the
Molly.
chat box from Julie.
Yeah, Lori, I love the way you put those in little nice little boxes, when to use the I, when to use, talking to the one person, when to use the we, when to use the you. They're a nice little neat box. And that's, I like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly.
And we're not taught this.
No,
I, this is not a normal conversation that you hear when I'm an English major. They don't talk about that. They talk about the nouns and the pronouns and the verbs and when to use them and the sentence structure and all that. But just really being able to communicate with people at a level that has them feel seen, heard, and valued, like your heart, Lori.
Mm.
That's what we're talking about here today. So we have a question from Julie from the chat box here. She wants some advice for introverts, and you're welcome to ask this yourself, Julie, if you want more information. If I'm not, so she says we're both talkers, which we are. So what is some advice you would give to introverts in being able to communicate?
I love that because one of the people that I just helped launch podcast, and she's a on stage person, she's a musician, and now she's doing this amazing podcast, and she's an absolute introvert. So my thought is finding what you're comfortable with, your comfort thing, because there's some people that they're never gonna do a podcast, they're never gonna speak because they're introverts. But also we see a lot of TED Talks by people that are introverts. And part of that is finding the comfort, maybe memorizing, the what you're gonna say or knowing ahead. Like when I go on a podcast, I don't need to know what they're gonna ask me. But some people that come on my podcast, they got to know. They just need to know. And that's okay. I give it to them. Sometimes I say no. That's only if I know them and know that I can walk them through it because I will make them feel so comfortable. Did that help? Did that answer? Okay.
That's such a beautiful question because we didn't even get into that conversation on the difference between introverts and extroverts and how both we all have our different strengths and what I want to say, strengths and preferences, right? For me, I took the Myers-Briggs test years ago, and for years I tested as an extrovert. I think is ENFP or something like that. And I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I don't have a problem getting in front of people and talking. And then I started taking it within the last, say, 7 years, and I started testing as an introvert. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. What's that about? And then I started listening to other speakers and who talked about extrovert and introvert. And here's something that just really lit me up and opened my vision up for the difference between introverts and extroverts. It's how you refuel yourself. Introverts need to are they can there are introverts that can be on stage or give a performance or give a talk, but they need to recharge on their own, right?
Mhm.
Extroverts get fueled by being out in public,
Yeah.
and that's when I realized, oh, I'm actually an introvert because I love being with people, but it saps my energy and I need to retreat to recharge myself. So I don't know if that makes a difference for anybody else, but that was a big aha for me because sometimes we people, right? All of us can tend to, or I tend to, put people in little boxes. But the reality is, it's what we need to be our best selves,
Mhm.
right?
And think about this. Sometimes people don't realize you're an introvert. And so you might say, Well, if you're an introvert like me, like it's a way to say it. Now, half the room might not be, but they're still going to listen because they're like, oh, well, I'm an extrovert. I never thought about you being an introvert. So again, it's a way to relate when we own it.
Right. And it's not a label that puts us like, oh, you're introvert, oh, you're shy, oh, you're not secure. Or, no,
No,
it's
because it's not that. Yeah.
it's not that at all. It's just where and again, that's my epiphany, my aha, where I recharge. That's where I could relate to introvert. Otherwise, I couldn't relate to myself as being an introvert. And then as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yes, that's it. I do need to retreat. I do need to recharge. I don't charge myself up being in front of people. That's where I actually get depleted. I
Mhm.
love it. I enjoy it, but I need to retreat. And it just made sense for me. So it's really fun when you get those kind of concepts. And for me, when I have that epiphany, that light that shines and that, energy that I get from it, from being able to just be more centered in who I am.
Validation. It's so good to be
Validation,
validated.
absolutely, absolutely. So we have a few more minutes left. Anybody have any epiphanies or ahas or additional questions, or just enter into the conversation with us? This is so much fun.
Yeah, I think situations like that, self-understanding is so
Mm.
important that we get
I
to know
love the way you
ourselves.
say that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's beautiful.
self-understanding. It's like, oh my goodness, now I know more about me. Helps us be more authentic,
Yes.
feel more comfortable, with ourselves, and that helps us be more comfortable with others.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah.
Danny, that's such a beautiful point because when we go on this journey called life and we are able to have these epiphanies and moments where we can be more authentic, then I never thought about that. But you're right. We give other people permission to do the same thing, don't
Yeah.
we?
Hmm.
It feels like that to me. And so I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So Lori, bring us home. Leave us with a parting comment. And I also, before you do that, though, I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you. We'll, of course, have that information in the description, but share what's the best way to get a hold of you and even kind of tell us a little more about your podcast.
So the best place to reach me is you got to put the three W's, Coach Laurie, LAURIE.com. Podcast is called Interrupted, Act Two, Reinventing Your Legacy. And you can get it on anywhere you get a podcast. And the thing I'd like to wrap up with is give yourself grace, but be intentional and just think, who is my audience? We already think that. How can I relate to them in a way, a one-on-one way? And when your brain wants to go, there's a whole Zoom room, I have to say, welcome everybody. Just remember, it's going to feel different and odd, but just say, welcome. It feels so simple. And sometimes the simplest things are the easiest.
Wow, that's beautiful. You're right. That's so true in life. We want to make things complicated and hard sometimes, but truth is simple and it
Mhm.
does resonate. So thank you, Lori, for joining us.
You. Thank you.
And this is where I'm like, and for everyone,
But I love that
and for
because it's the
everyone that's
awareness.
here.
Yeah.
We so appreciate your authenticity, your vulnerability, your just heart to make a difference in the world and be able to not only share your journey, but be able to give people permission to share their journey with others. And for all of us to really be able to share our hearts and get to know each other at a level that allows for that, deeper relationship of being seen, heard, and witnessed, right? Seen,
Right.
heard, and valued. So I just want to remind everybody to make every connection an exceptional connection. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, guys.